Kia ora and welcome to Tino Pai Podcast, where we delve into the raw and real stories of individuals navigating life's diverse journeys. From the courageous voices of the queer community to those overcoming addiction, from mental health warriors to frontline heroes shaping our communities. We're here to amplify lived experiences. Join us as we uncover the triumphs, challenges, and resilience of the human spirit. No mai, haere mai, and welcome to Tino Pai Podcast. In today's episode, Lee talks about his journey of coming out as a gay man, bullying, and being diagnosed with ADHD later in life. If you or someone you know needs support relating to today's topics, support resources will be linked in the episode notes.
Kia ora koutou, welcome to Tino Pai Podcast. Ko Monika Ho. I will be your host today, interviewing a good friend of mine, Lee Eklund. For those who may recognise my voice, I was on the first podcast where Lee was interviewing me, and I was telling you about my journey. But Lee, would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay, yes, I will. Tēnā koutou katoa, no Eklund. Eklund, sorry, Lee Eklund toku ingoa, kei te mahi ahau ki te National Public Health, Te Whatu Ora. My role is the sexual wellbeing and Rainbow Diversity and Inclusion Health Promotion Advisor. Yeah, and I've been doing this for about 11 months. And I just thought, I thought it was important to share my story as well as that you did, because people out there that listen to our stories, because things were very different back then. They were very different for me. So I think it's great for people to know, my journey, and hopefully people learn from this.
Yeah,
both
definitely.
That have been through it, and also for people to be mindful of people that are going through those rough times as well. Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here today.
No worries.
And that beautiful intro.
Yay!
I guess we start from the beginning. Who was Lee as a youngster?
Let's start from the very beginning. It's not a musical class. So I'm going to go back as far as I can remember as a real young kid. So when I'm the youngest of three siblings, so there's four of us. There's quite a big age gap actually between me and my siblings. So my upbringing was quite different to my brothers and sisters because they were all grown up when I wasn't. So I was with my mum mostly all the time. So it's a very smothered, loved child. And I think with the co-papa of the coming out story, I think when I knew that I was different was I liked other things that boys didn't. So an example would be, I remember my dad bought me a Meccano set. Now, a Meccano set is something that you build with spanners and rods and nuts and bolts. And I absolutely cried my eyes out, and they ended up having to get me a Cabbage Patch doll, which was off the Sunday market,
Wow.
a cheap version. And a week later, the head fell off. So that's how cheap it was. So it was a whānau where we bought things that was a substitute more than the real thing, just to be cheaper. We're Northerners, so at the end of the day. Going from there, I think that's when I knew that I liked different things. And I think that's when people started to see that I was different. And that's when they see something different, particularly kids, they start using that against you. Mm-hmm. So I was very mindful if I wanted to, play with female things, then I would do it probably indoors. But I was a very quiet child, believe it or not. I was quite sick. I had to get an operation on my tonsils because I would stop breathing. Maybe that's why it's the way I am, to be honest, but I wouldn't change it for the world. So I'd say that's going from I'd say from 5 years upwards. So going from the age of 10 to 16, that's when I started really noticing a difference in myself, the feelings that I had and knowing I was different. And also that's when a lot of the bullying really did start, because I lived in a different area, a different suburb, and I moved to another suburb where two suburbs had rivalries, so to speak. So me being from that area didn't help at all. So I'd say from the age of 10, that's when I knew that I was liking the same sex. Being young, we all explore, and I think that there was some friends, well, a couple of friends of mine that explored at that age. And obviously that's when I'd get confirmed that I just really liked the same sex. And obviously it was something that you want to be download on because, at that age,
And so when you say that's when the bullying began, was that from people your own age?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That was when I went to, you say high school here. So in high school, but it didn't help that I was like 4 foot and a roll paper. So I was so tiny and so small for my age that it was, some people looked and they thought, well, that's an easy target. I was different then. But starting in that school, for the first year or so, it was rough. I felt alone. I wasn't really that social. I was just afraid of conflicts, and I just, I was afraid of issues or dramas because I didn't want to create anything. So I tried to fade in the background.
Right.
And then there was these girls. There's 5. We're still friends today. There was these 5 girls at school, and if it wasn't really for them, because they really did stick up for me at school, and these were you're the head of the bullies at school, I guess. The older lads. And it's always that thing at school where, you get the good-looking girls with the good, the like the Rydell High, tapping the table, like the Rydell High sort of thing, but I was friends with these girls where a lot of the boys fancied. And I remember it got into a point where they did stick up for me, and then they all said, right, let's say that you're going out with all of us. And because they were going, gay boy, this, that, and the other. And you know what? It didn't make any difference because they still hassled me because I had 5 girlfriends, and they just was in disbelief. So it doesn't really matter what you do, is if you're more vulnerable and let them get on with it, or if you resist, then they're worse at it and they try harder and they'll go above and beyond to try and really make you fall. But yeah, no, I owe a lot to the girls for that. So that was a real big bullying point for me at school. I'll give you some examples of bullying. So we've got a craft block, and it's like, we're on the 2nd floor here. So they got both my legs and put me over the balcony and dangled me by my ankles. Wow. And everything fell out of my bag, and just people standing at the bottom stopped just staring and pointing.
Wow, that's pretty excessive.
That was a lot that happened with me. It was always the butt joke, and no one did anything. And I wouldn't dare say anything because I just didn't want anybody to get into trouble, because if they got into trouble, then it would spin out and they knew where I lived. I feared for me, but I feared for, the people that, my family as well, because it's not nice when you're youngest child is getting bullied, and I didn't want to tell my parents or anybody because it just opened up there. So the first problem was I just didn't speak out.
And so you didn't tell your parents about the bullying? And
No.
Okay.
Absolutely not. Particularly my father, because he really wanted me to, I think he wanted me to really more stand up for myself, where I was quite smothered by my mother, being the youngest, and, I was the last one to leave the nest. So, so I think that I just kept it quiet, and that's the worst thing that I could have done, really. Right. And that's where I think that's what really started my confidence, just really not expressing. I was robbed of what I could have become, really. But yeah, I knew I was always different, the way I felt.
And were your parents supportive of when you came out? Like, when did that happen?
Oh, that happened when I was 21. My mum heard me on a phone call, actually. Okay. I didn't tell them. And to be honest, one of the things that was really, if I would have known that my parents would have been okay with it, then I would have probably come out a little bit earlier. I just didn't want anybody to, I didn't tell anybody because I didn't want anybody to get it round to my parents, and that's a small town, right? So, I feel that I thought they always knew, but apparently not. And I was in absolute disbelief that they didn't know. I was like, how did you not know? You bought me a Cabbage Patch doll. Right. I liked different things. So I was like, I said to my mum, can you remember when I used to wear your shoes? And the fly traps, the colourful ones in the 80s? And I used to just do all stuff like that, and...
Do you think they would have known the name for it, though?
What it was, Monique, is that at first, when my mum heard me on a phone call, she opened the door and she said, please tell me it's not true. And I just said, I'll ring you back to my friend. So I went downstairs and I was in bits and I just said, look, I've tried to fight it, Mum. I've tried, and this is the way it is. And I think there was a lot of self-blame for my mum because it was a new thing. But now they wouldn't have it any other way. But what the problem was is that they feared the way that people would treat me in society, because in the 1950s and 60s, gay people were killed, they were beat up, we were called freaks. It just wasn't allowed. There was a law in place for people like us. So they feared for my safety. And then I think that when they knew that people liked me for me, particularly when I moved to the Canary Islands, that's when things started really changing in my life. But they just feared for my well-being. They knew I got bullied to a certain extent, but they didn't realise the bullying carried on until I was in my teenage years after I left school. So it wasn't just at school, it carried on from that. And some of the biggest bullies in my life were the friends that I was hanging around with.
Right.
They just feared for my safety more than anything. And then my dad didn't know until a couple of years later. And the way he found out was, this was in the Canary Islands, that I met a guy, and I think I was just so desperate to have a relationship that I was scaring everybody off. I was like, oh. Anyway, so I met someone and it didn't work out. Was together a month, which I thought was, that's it, married. It's a lifetime. Yeah. It's little do you know that when you are married, I mean, I've been in a relationship with my husband now for 19 years. So it makes you think that month was just nothing.
Yeah.
So I was really upset about it. And he said, what's wrong? I said, I can't tell you. And he went, why? I said, I just can't. And then when you see your father, get emotional. That just made it worse. And I just said, well, his name, I've split up with someone. His name's Al, and I'm in a really bad space. And then it went a bit quiet, and then just a bit of small chit chat and that, and then they left, and I felt a little bit better that he knew. Mm-hmm. Actually, I felt a lot better. Actually, to be honest, as soon as my dad knew, as soon as the most important people in my life knew, that's when my life absolutely completely changed, and I started being me.
Yeah, and you came into your own.
Yeah, and I just didn't want to start over analysing that I should have done it earlier, but because I wasn't ready. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when that happened and that weight was lifted off, what did that do for you? Can you go elaborate a bit?
Well, the most two people that I didn't really want to hurt, that's why I reckon that, I didn't want them to know, because I didn't want to hurt them. So as soon as they knew and it was off, I can't really describe how different my life started to change. And particularly when they started seeing friends that I was engaged with in the Canary Islands, because when you move to a different country, you create your own whānau, and it's the same what I've done here. And then they used to come over, and I think that they were really relieved, and just really, they just knew that I was with some really good people.
You're happy
because they knew of the raru-rarus that were happening with me in my teenage years. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I mean, now that it's clear of my behaviours as a child, the way I used to think, the anxieties, the massive anxiety attacks and panic attacks, and the vulnerability that it was just awful. It makes me cringe thinking about my teenage years. Would I want to go back to my teenage years? Absolutely not. Mm-hmm. And that's a really sad thing to really, really say, because sometimes they're the best parts of your life, right? Mm-hmm. Well, for they're meant to be, it's learning, isn't it? Yeah. So life definitely started looking a lot better. I think it was 2 years when I was living in Canada, and then 2 years later, I went to Australia after that. So I was prepared, so, because I didn't have any gay friends.
Right.
I didn't hang around with gay people. Mine was all probably a lot of straight people. I knew some gay people. Mm-hmm. In Grimsby Town, where I'm from, it was full of gay women. And I remember going to a gay bar in Manchester, I think it was, or Blackpool, and it was just full of gay men. It was like, what's wrong with this picture? Hey? Because I think it was more accepted for gay women in my town more than it was for gay men, mm-hmm. in my opinion. Yeah.
And did that play a part in why you moved to Australia?
It played a big part in why I left England. Mm-hmm. I left England to come out and start being me. Mm-hmm. And as soon as my dad knew, I was there a couple of years. As soon as my dad knew, that's when I started living in the moment. Mm-hmm. And I loved it. And I left loving it. And the advice there is that leave something that you love, because all those wonderful memories will still stay. Because if you're over it and you just milk it to death, then you're just not going to have any good memories. But yeah, that was a big starting point in my life. I've lived in England since 1999.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how long were you in Australia for?
Oh, so I was in Tenerife for 4 years. I was in Australia for a working visa. And I think that this was a stepping stone for me to come to New Zealand. Mm-hmm. So it was all about, it's the fear, trying it. And I was absolutely terrified to leave the Canary Islands, where I built my own sort of whānau.
Yeah.
And once I did Australia for a year, and that's when I came to New Zealand on my own. And I still look in disbelief the life that I've got now. But yeah. I'm very proud of myself for what I've built and what I've created for myself, particularly in the last couple of years, for sure, yeah.
And I truly believe that you being you
Yeah.
over here in New Zealand,
Yeah.
you've probably touched more people than you realise.
By being myself.
By being yourself,
Yeah.
being authentic, and whatever form that comes.
Yeah, I think what I bring into my role is that I'm part of a minority community. I'm also experienced being mentally traumatized by the way that I was treated as a kid from others. So to do well in what you do, you've got to understand and be that person's shoes. So I empathize a lot with people. And, particularly, as an example, so when I used to work for NZEF, which is now Burnett Foundation, that was more, so when we used to get people that are uneducated, so sometimes you'll get an example of like, I date being the same person as someone with HIV because I don't want to contract it. Now, we all know that's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. There's no way you can. But I was that teenager that when it was when the AIDS epidemic was happening and everybody was dying and my feelings were getting so strong that threw me off the Richter scale because I knew what I was, but all these gay men are dying. And I was so paranoid. It got to a point where I was ringing up the AIDS line. Probably it got to a point where it was daily when I was about 16. And I was going, I've been into a sandwich shop and I noticed a lady cut a thumb, but she had a plaster on it. And I was wondering if you could get HIV through a sandwich. And, and I remember clearly that the woman on the end of the line said, no, don't be so stupid. That's ridiculous. And going through that experience and going, well, that way wasn't helpful at all. No. It's set me off even more. So I get it where people are uneducated. And I get that because I was as well. But education, I ended up working for the New Zealand AIDS Foundation after I was so paranoid about HIV, AIDS. Well, clearly, because your community's dying around you. So I get that. I get that sort of, it's not their fault that people overanalyze things a lot more than other people.
And that's anxiety, when that fear comes into
ADHD, that's the anxiety, the OCD, everything. So particularly people and queer people that have had it rough or been mistreated, they're the ones, that's what caused my paranoia. Mm. And because everybody was telling me that I was gay when I knew myself, but they were telling me in a really, really not in a positive way. So, and that's another reason as well, is I didn't want to prove the bullies right.
Right.
That they were, gay boy, we knew you were right. And you could imagine I've had every name under the sun. Queer was a big one. Mm-hmm. I don't mind the queer using because they've you called us that, we're owning it. Yeah, and I get that.
Reclaimed it.
But then again, other people don't because it was a really negative word. So lots of lessons learned from that. And it really made a difference in my role, particularly for being community engagement and also being peer testing as well, and also educating people.
Mm. Trying to remove that fear.
You don't know.
Yeah, that's right.
And there's a reason, they don't know. There's people that are not willing and they do it personally. They have a personal opinion. Or there's people where they really want to, but they fear of getting it wrong or they don't.
Yeah, that's right. And that's where it comes from.
I respect your values, but we've all got other values. I'm not saying that I was like that when I was 16. Oh, we all have different values. I was just explosive, but I was explosive to myself. Mm-hmm. I was angry when no one was around at myself because I was too afraid to be angry to others. It was a horrible journey, but it got me where I am today. And that's what makes me forgive and just get on with it.
Yeah,
because
that's right.
If I didn't go through all that bad stuff when I was younger, I would not be in the life that I'm living today, which is a life that I would never even dream of accomplishing.
Well, we might not have ever met.
Right, exactly. But that's what you've got to think about it as, is that things happen. Make sure that something good comes out of that and learn something. I don't like saying, where you fail, where you need to make mistakes to make you stronger in what you do.
Mm-hmm.
There's ways of addressing things in a really constructive way more than fighting fire with fire. And that's all of me dealing with the community that I've served for the last 10 years. And I'm forever grateful. And I owe a lot to them and the New Zealand AIDS Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
But it took me years to go, actually, I've got to reward myself on that because a lot was me doing that. And to be proud of yourself and love yourself is hard. It's because it's like, oh God, I don't want to. Here he is, self-indulgent. Or if I was a bar of chocolate, I'd eat myself, one of those. But I'm not, it took a long time to be proud of myself and acknowledge the good stuff that we're doing.
Yeah. The mahi that you've done. But
not be too like, Yeah.
I want to take us back, if I can. You mentioned in your teenage years, you not only noticed that you were different because you were noticing that you're gay, but you noticed other differences between you and your peers.
I was diagnosed with ADHD about 3 years ago. And I was 47, so adult ADHD. And since I had that diagnosis, my life has changed. I can't describe how my life has changed for the right reasons and made me look at things very, very differently. So reflecting back, and I was thinking, that's why I felt like that. That's why I behave like that. That's why this, all of these sort of things. Mm-hmm. And it's like I forgive myself because I was hurting people. No, I wasn't hurting people, but do you know the people I was hurting? My family, my mum. I would go to some extremes to really push that boundary to upset her. It's awful. And it's still not, good enough today, but it's like I've got a reason why I was difficult.
Yeah, you have an understanding now.
But when we had these conversations with my mum and I remember when I was about 18, 19, and I used to really overanalyze it and go, what an awful thing to do. What an awful thing to do to they're the best friends I've got in this world because they will support me no matter what. Mm. And then I was a bit hard on myself, and my mum she said, I'm getting over it now. She said, we were all quite stressed in a way. She said, but you've got to remember is that you were fighting who you were. And she goes, what kills us is that you felt as though you couldn't tell us. Mm-hmm. And that's what made them really feel bad. So I get it. So coming out, as well as the attention deficit hyperactive disorder. But that's what really made me think, that's why I used to play up at school with the teachers and really push the boundary. And they're one of them really, really cheeky kids that they're so naughty that you just go, you laugh, you go, oh my God, that was so cute, but really not acceptable. And that's when I went, superpower. And that's when I realised in my later years that I've got like a sort of superpower. And it just, that's my defence mechanism. Mm. Because at school, I couldn't, nothing was sinking in. There was one way of learning. If you didn't learn like that, we went into a separate class at school where naughty kids go to. And I was bullied for that. Mm. So there was always something to bully me about. And that's why I think I was so closed in, because I didn't want anybody to know anything about me so that they could throw it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's when I knew that I thought, that's why I behave like this. And that's why I was always a joker, always. But it was different when I was joking, when I was being funny, or people were demanding for me to be funny. And I think that's one way of getting me out with the bullies as well, is that I think they used to tell me to do stuff and I used to do it and used to get away with it. And I remember them saying, how come you're getting away with it and we're not? I just couldn't get away from it.
It was just always something.
I was absolutely the entertainer, the clown, and I was using it in the wrong ways. But that saved me in many ways. But struggling to write things down, remembering things. I couldn't really write. I didn't know how to start a conversation. A sentence, or so anything admin, anything that you wrote down, anything, because there were no computers then, no mobile phones. So anything like that, I just tried to avoid. And that happened when I was a teenager and I worked in factories. So I went in a factory when I was 16. And then I stayed in factory work until I was about 23. And that's what I thought that my life was going to be, because it was just, you didn't think. It's just easy money. I thought, I like this. And this is where I'm very proud of where I am today. And it is doable.
Yeah, definitely.
It is doable.
I remember
if you have the support there,
when we first opened Te Whare Kahukura, and you got the role that you're in now, and you came in, and I remember having this conversation with you, and then we moved to a different conversation, and then it was a different topic, and I just remember thinking, what's going on here? And then you opened up about ADHD, and I got a newfound understanding about how that works and what I need to do in those situations. And so that made me really aware, not just when interacting with you, but interacting with other people I know that have ADHD or ADD. To not come from a place of frustration because you might not understand, but just listening and rolling with it.
Do you know what? I'll acknowledge you for saying that, and it's absolutely right what you're saying, but it's hard. Like, I know it's hard sometimes for my husband. I know it's hard for people that people need to change. We get better if people treat us better, and it's all about being constructive, and there's ways of dealing with us. People say that when you get older, it gets easier. No, you've still got ADHD. It's still there. You put tools and practices into place to make you better at what you do. And it does. It won't go away, but it does get better. But I will say this, is that the biggest thing that I got from this diagnosis, everybody knew that I was. My husband went, you're absolutely not surprised. What's the point in going for it? Because I just think I just need to know. One of my eldest sisters said, do you think I've got, she said, absolutely. She said, don't be offended, but you might be on the spectrum for something else. And then that's when my mum went, yeah, you always liked your lights, didn't you, Lee? Like me fairy lights and coloured lights and all that. So I don't know, that's just gayism, Mum. That's just me. Anything twinkly. So yeah, it was just knowing.
Having that peace of mind.
It was just knowing, it was confirming, and just really like, it was life-changing. So a lot of people self-diagnose. A lot. There's so many adult ADHD cases, more so than ever. Well, that's because they didn't pick it up earlier. Do we feel robbed that they didn't know that? It wasn't around then. So you can't change that. It's happened now. And once again, it's like, I wish that I could go back in time and then maybe knowing what was wrong with me, because that was the biggest paranoia, is that I knew that sometimes I didn't feel right. My anxiety, I just thought, what is going on? I knew that I was not where, I always knew I wasn't well in a way.
But now that you know.
I just can't describe how it I'm talking about for me. I can't describe how much that diagnosis absolutely changed my life completely, and really made me.
It's like that missing puzzle piece.
Yeah, there's a reason for that, and I think I always need a reason why I'm not feeling that right. Because if I don't know what's wrong with me, I'm still overanalyzing. I've learned not to. I don't worry about the past. I still worry about the future, and that's still a practice that I still have to take. And I've got some tools with that. And I think we're definitely going to have some more discussions on this, probably in a future podcast, with some ADHDers. So brace yourself for that, because we're all different. Like a box of chocolates, you don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
If they've got teeth marks in them, they're the hard ones. But it absolutely changed my life. Medication wise, some people don't want to take it, some people do. I take it when I need to take it. But some people with ADHD, I think that it's an addictive personality. We get addicted to things very, 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 very easily. Yeah. Very easily. So it's about, making sure that you're taking that medication correctly, and making sure that it's maintained, and you're seeing professional help for that as well.
And recognizing that in the beginning is
So
key.
To find out, was just took me 9 months to get in.
Wow.
One of the reasons why that I wanted to get a diagnosis was that I was studying public health, and I thought, okay, well, I was just hearing more and more people saying about, it was actually somebody from sexual health that said it just changed her life because she was quite, really ADHD. And I was just like, really? Does it do this? And so I instantly booked into an appointment. Like I said, 9 months to get in. Unfortunately, I was on my last paper. So as you can imagine, me studying, didn't understand academic, didn't know how to do an essay, didn't understand the language. I understood the role, but yeah, it's if you know that it's not you, it's the way that you're born. And I was born with ADHD. I was born a queer man, so you are born with it. But it's just barriers and costs
and
for
finding
other people.
Tools. Tools and to put in your kids into.
There's some great tools. Like the psychiatrist that I use, he said, well, try the happiness trap. And it's a book about when you start spinning out and worrying about things. Oh, have I left the flag outside TNK? Have I left the lights on? Have I left the iron on? Just stuff like that. Or, well, not more like you worrying about something that hasn't happened in the future. That really, it's like you're in that world and it hasn't even happened yet. And it's just you're worrying about something.
Lee, I wondered if we could go back to the time when your bullying was at its highest, that 18 mark. I think our listeners could really benefit from hearing about some of the scenarios and how you pushed through those. Yeah.
Well, firstly, from about 17 onwards, I think that they were the ones that really stuck in my mind, I think. Obviously, there was a lot more bullying at school, but these ones were just extreme ones that really stuck in my mind. You leave after school, you get a job. Bullying shouldn't have happened at all, but reduced. So I had some friends that, once again, being the funny, vulnerable friend, people used me for their own entertainment. And I mean, these would go to extremes of, it's like my misery humoured people. And now that I reflect on it, I just can't believe how people can just get someone that with anxiety that is clearly distressed to laugh at and continue. I just think that I find that quite hard to believe, even though it happened to me. So I will give you examples. So one example would be I woke up one morning and I opened the curtains and I looked at the grass, and on the grass someone had bleached in big capital letters, "Lee is gay." On my parents' grass. Wow. This is my parents' grass. So I remember my dad saying, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, son. It's fine, it's fine." And he obviously thought, well, he was very angry that someone had done that. Not only to me, but the grass. So it's just things like that that go out the way to do that. They've sawn trees down with Christmas lights on. They've gone to the toilet on my car.
Wow, and these are all
They've done a poo on my bonnet.
From people you considered friends?
Yeah. And I think that I just felt as though that I wouldn't have had any other friends apart from them. It was just insane because there's no way that anything like that would happen to me in my life now. I'd definitely speak up about it. I'm a lot more stronger about it, but I'm around people that influence me to be strong, you know? So, and that's the people that I choose to be in my life. What else did they do? They used to light dog muck and light it on fire outside the front door. They've taken my moped scooter and completely trashed it so that it's not drivable. So I've had to literally try and, and
these are all crimes. They're not just bullying.
This is the thing. There's abuse. There's bullying and abuse. It was mental abuse. I mean, I'm not saying that these are all they were partners of my friends, but still bad enough, eh?
And what about when you joined the workforce? Did that bullying continue?
What do you mean by workforce?
The workforce, when you went to work, was bullying experienced at work?
No, I don't. There wasn't really. Actually, do you know what? I've just remembered. There was one where I worked in an aerosol factory. And like I say, people always treat me as though I was gay because I was quite gay. But, you know, always defending that I wasn't because I didn't want anybody to prove, well, the way that everything was going around for gay people. And I remember do you know what he did actually? It was in front of everybody on the factory floor and he bent me over some roller that, like, you know, there's rollers that you get when you go to the supermarket, like these like rollers, it's like a line of rollers, and bent me over there and started, you know, thrusting, but in a joking way. And I was really upset about that because it made them, this is the problem, it makes them look big, but it makes you absolutely looks completely small. And
because they're doing it as a joke or to be funny, they feel like the severity of it is not
is it a joke? It's a joke for you to make you look big instead of somebody else. So, and this is what I think bullies do, is that they prey on the vulnerable. And I remember thinking, this is not good. And I remember some girls at work saying, no, this isn't, I'd just report it. And do you know what? I was absolutely mortified. I thought, I couldn't believe I actually reported it because I never would have done that. And he ended up getting a real bad warning for it. And his wife came up to me and said, how dare you blah, blah, blah. And I just said, but that's what he did. But it was only a joke. It's been blown out of proportion. And then I felt so bad because I got on with his wife. But it's not, do you know what I mean? It was just things like that. I mean, I'm probably scratching the surface on the experiences that I've been through but that's a perfect example of like, you know, it's not okay.
Yeah.
It's not okay. And it's still not okay. It's getting better. But people need to speak up about it once again.
Mm-hmm.
I spoke up about it. Something got done. Clearly, he really didn't speak to me after that. And of course, I was like, I didn't mean to, because I just wanted to get on with everybody. Yeah. I was so desperate for people to like me, and I hated people not liking me. And that really used to make me so paranoid.
And I guess it also highlights it's not just important for the person who's being bullied to speak up, but also those that are seeing it, or hearing about it.
Exactly, call it out. I did it was like a 15-minute presentation, and this was in a school in Wairarapa. It's actually in Greytown. And it was about talking about bullying. It's Pink Shirt Week, and that's one of the things that I was discussing about, you know, bullies, what they do, and I just said the worst thing that I didn't do was call it out. I said the thing is to call it out. But when you're being bullied, how are you going to call it out to someone that's physically and mentally abusing you? Mm-hmm. And you're fearful. You don't want, and then you get some people where they go, oh, you know, it's not you. They start hating other things. What happened to my parents' place? Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Oh, I forgot to mention that it was when I was about 14. This is I suppose not bullying, but this is where they're getting to me, but also getting to my parents. Somebody opened the patio door and put a hose pipe in the house and flooded the house. Wow. For a joke. Do you see that? Do you see where this is, you know, getting to? Yeah. It's like some people go above and beyond to really get to you by hating others that you love. Mm-hmm. It's insane. It's insane. People don't realise the damage that people are doing. They don't see the aftermath. They don't see people behind closed doors. Mm-hmm. They don't see the ones where they're just absolutely thinking, why am I here? You haven't got a purpose. You're just a jester for everybody else. Nobody takes you seriously. Mm-hmm. No one's going to be there for you, you know, and that was another thing I found out as well, is that I was always there for others, because I just always liked making people feel good and mm-hmm. funny and laugh, and you know, it's so joyous, isn't
mm-hmm. it? And you're still like that.
I'm
to a point.
In it.
Yeah.
But that's because I'm being myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because I can do it when I want to do it. It's not because I'm being told to do it. And for that, I'm forever grateful in both employments that I've had here at National Public Health, as well as, you know, NZ, Burnett Foundation, is that they that they knew that I thrived being myself. And I think that is just, you can't wish for anything better. Mm-hmm. You know, everybody's got superpowers and really good at what they do. So why on earth would you want someone to do something that they're not good at? You know, let them thrive in what mm-hmm. they do. And that's encouraging people that do have ADHD, and it's a superpower. Find out what it is and just thrive with it, mm-hmm. because it's really important to be yourself. We're not mean. We're not intentional to be mean. We're not being rude because we don't listen. It's just because we don't hear you, because we're hyper-focusing on something else. Mm-hmm. There's so many traits. Yeah, so many resources out there. It's a superpower that I've learned to really be proud of, and I thank my ADHD for getting me where I am today. But ADHD and also my personality is, you know, I'm not saying it's all ADHD, because it's a mixture of both. It's mm-hmm. just the hyperactiveness definitely helped me out there, you know. Yeah.
Especially in those times on stage.
Well, I mean, that's another podcast, actually, talking about the drag life. But doing that, like, I hated getting on stage and for people waiting for me. My anxiety was going through the roof. We still do it I don't feel like that now, but in work situations or when you're at Huey's and then it goes around, it says, right, introduce yourself. And you can see it going and your heart's going like this, like your palpitations, your anxiety, you're thinking, oh, it's me next. Oh, am I looking worried? Then your face goes red and it's awful. It's like your chest is going to explode. That has stopped. And that stopped 3 years ago. And that's with the diagnosis.
Wow.
I can't describe how much it's just really made me look at things very, very differently. But I've had a lot of different personal development channels to make me better, and drag was definitely one of them. Lily was one of the pinnacles of my career. She got me where I am today as well. And you know, she's packed up in those boxes and she's going, let me out.
Well, everyone needs to stay tuned for that podcast.
Exactly, you know, but it was the same there. I'm just being me, but look like Bet Lynch that's dripped in sequins and rhinestones with a little bit more of a northern accent. It's original, but being yourself as well. Yeah. Oh, I can't wait for that co-papa of Lily. That'll be fun. But yeah, it's been a very, very colourful ride. Very, very full on. I've certainly lived life, and that's one of the things that I am once again proud of. Is just
you should be proud of yourself.
Oh, do you know what? I am. I really am. I'm not like going to be like a Danny LaRue going, oh, well, I was fabulous. Did you see me on stage, darling? I was absolutely fabulous, you know, really self-indulgent. But it's just acknowledging that what you've brought and what you've done. But I couldn't have done this with the people that are around me, to be honest. It's a collective of things, but that's all down to letting me be myself and seeing the superpowers that can happen. Because it's for Whangatonga, without a shadow of a doubt. It's just that, you know, put me in a room full of strangers. What did somebody say to me? They said, do you know what, Lee? You would get on with the most grumpiest, bitter, narcissistic, gaslighting person in the world. And I went, I know. It took me ages to say that. I don't know what it is.
You definitely would.
I don't know what it is. It's just I've always had it, and it's use it. Everybody's got something in there.
Yeah.
You have. We sing. There's been many conversations. Can you remember when we used to, when it was to Tanako Kahugura or Tifari, that we had some similar conversations about, you know, when you just want something hyper-focuses and you worry about it and then you just can't. So it's all those similarities. But isn't it amazing that when we discuss those, Monique, that when someone relates and gets it, it just makes you feel a lot more better because you're not...
Makes you feel less alone, less isolated.
Exactly, but that's the problem. People feel alone and they're on their own. This is coming out, being gay, being, you know, LGBTQ A+, having ADHD, suicide, you've got mental health. The more people are talking about it, the more it's going to get normalised and people are going to seek help, and it's going to reduce stigma against it as well, you know?
100%.
Absolutely it is. And that's the key, is that's what we're doing these for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you were saying how we were having conversation and recognising each other's similarities, that's why I laughed when you mentioned about, oh no, I've left the flag outside, because that was from one of our conversations when I had left the flag outside.
But do you know what we do? We laugh about it and print this off. No, not that one. No. But we laugh because it's similar to what we do.
Yeah, we understand.
And it helps significantly, and this is what makes us quite strong, Monique, I think, is that when you you just people get who you flaw. It's not a flaw, I would say, but we laugh at things that frustrate us because you get mad with yourself. You're like, oh, can't believe I did this, can't believe that. And that was a big thing me growing up, is that I blamed myself. I was very, 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 very hard on myself, hated myself. How are you going to meet some, all of those really negative thoughts. It's really, do you not think it's really scary how bad I was on myself? And I'm really thinking now, how did I do it? How did I do it? Yeah, it's there's lots to be learned about the way you engage with queer people, the way that you engage with people with attention deficit disorders, the way you engage with people with mental health. It's all compassion, empathy, and being really, really constructive. There's ways of doing it. People change if people change towards them. Make them feel valued, make them feel as though they belong, because we don't feel as though we belong. If you're just going to talk to us in a negative way, narcissistic people, gaslighty people, well, that's usually comes together, and people with ADHD, right? Now, quite a funny story. I was looking through these article things, and it said, because I've been out with people that have been narcissistic, and it said people with ADHD and narcissism absolutely will not work because narcissists want you to listen, and they're dominating, and they try to turn things around on you. And clearly we don't really listen. That's the superpower by not even doing anything. But the way that you really, if you're narcissist towards someone that is with ADHD or any mental health problems or feeling low, it's dangerous because it's bullying without a shadow of a doubt. And if they don't change, then it's not very good to be around people that really make you feel like that. If it can be helped, it could be in a job, could be in whānau, could be a friend,
but it's all about getting difficult to know yourself, knowing, because everybody needs to do that. Find out who they are, how they work, and then they work better with others.
Absolutely it is. But, and look, it's rainbow people, Māori, Pacifica, disabled people. Don't think that you're going to, as soon as you meet someone, you want to do something and you demand it straight away. But it takes time to build trust and respect within those communities, because we've all had some sort of we've all been treated quite badly in the past. And I think that we're very wary about people that we let in. And if you care or want to make a difference, then I think that people they suss it out.
Well, Lee, I just want to say thank you for your amazing kōrero today and really opening up and touching on those topics that are not only important, but they also make you who you are today.
Yeah.
And letting us dive in to make others feel less alone, less isolated by listening to their stories on this podcast.
Yeah, it was an absolute pleasure. There was, we just got through a snippet of my colourful life, but, there may be another one. But I agree. I think the outcomes that we've got today is, with just don't feel alone. If you do, be around people that matter. Be around people that care. If you can remove yourself from people that just make you feel bad, do it. Call it out. This is for people, if you see people being bullied, call it out. Not necessarily call it out to the bullies, but tell someone, a teacher, or someone that you trust, because you're not only helping out the person that's being bullied, there's a reason why the bully is bullying.
Yeah.
And this could help the bully, because you don't know what happens behind closed doors. So you've got to look at it like there's a reason why hurt people. Yeah.
See something, do something.
Exactly, it is. It's about speaking out, and that's one, like I say, one thing I didn't do. And I just think that it's you've just look after yourselves out there. It's getting better, and it needs to get better.
Once again, I just want to thank Lee for your kōrero, and thank those listening to Tino Pai Podcast. Like and subscribe. You can access the podcast on all major social media platforms. Ka kite anō.
Thank you for tuning in to the Tino Pai Podcast. If you've been moved by today's stories and want to stay connected, be sure to subscribe and follow us on your favourite podcast platform. Together, let's continue to honour and celebrate the richness of human experience. Until next time, take care and keep shining your light. Ka kite.